How much battery I got? Oh, we good. Greetings. Um,
This lady popped after one question,
oh
but in the
no,
end,
I did not. Was not trying to do that on the laptop.
This year, I'm holiday shopping.
No. I keep forgetting how sensitive this laptop is. Dang. Can't even put the mouse on anything. Just put it right here. So let me jump into this. Let's give honor to the source, the creator, the most high for making all this possible. What I want to share with you, ancestors known and unknown, let's give gratitude to everything, all things and so forth. The moment of clarity I just had, I've learned, and especially for up and coming, if you want to subscribe to entrepreneur business or, there are parts of you that would be asked in many layers to, in a new version of you, there will be many parts of you that will constantly be reminded what to let go of in order for you. What are you willing to go through to, how you hear like obtain success, but it's more than just that. It's more of the integrity through what exactly you're doing. So that's the difference, that if someone was living a lifestyle that is more sustainable and sufficient, it's the way I always break down these things from a physical and spiritual aspect is that how important it is that what you put out, what you plant, the seeds that you sow, you reap that harvest, that fruit. Karma is one thing that we don't escape, so it doesn't matter what I'm building towards now. It matters, but it still doesn't exclude things that I've had to navigate through to get here. And that's even learning and not being hard on myself for what I did not learn. So where I'm getting at, one of my greatest challenges that I have to overcome is the spirit of lust. Now, desiring one thing is another thing. Like having, I would say what my challenge is due to the wounded masculinity that I displayed. The mother wound I had unhealthy attachments to women, so that would be in a more lustful way. Meaning that it's natural to see and be visual as a man, and being that we're ruled by the Mars element, that energy per se, respect, respect, admiration, and sex. So it's natural for us to embody these things. Now, what has been problematic or the corruption around it is that how a lot of us as men, or during childhood, whatever you subscribe to, if you don't want to get into gender, to each their own. But for me, as a little boy, what I was exposed to young that could have exposed someone to being hypersexual, meaning that this urge, this predatory aspect of this hunger that you can't quench. So that's why I can see how being exposed to sex so young, or being exposed to things to where it's like a child being introduced to, I'm using this as an analogy, being introduced to candy, and this dopamine feel, this over excitement, exertion towards, like, I gotta have it, I'll do anything to have it. So notice how, like, a child, when they are exposed to certain elements or like candy, certain things that who knows what it has in it, and then it's an addiction. It becomes an addiction, and then you see their behavior when they don't give it. So I've noticed, even through exposure to culture, through being exposed to sex, being exposed to things so early for a lot of men and a lot of young boys and women, but I'm speaking from a perspective of young men, to where that as you gradually grow into whatever your journey succumbs to, I also realized like from being, not having structure from that wounded femininity, and then realizing how that spirit of lust or that spirit of certain things that was not balanced or learn how to manage or structure that energy, that creative energy as I know it now, and not see the sacred aspect of that, then you will have young men or young women who were exposed young go down a road of, again, overextending, feeling like they had to create a life around those very things. And even where, like, just using this as an example, when you look at someone who sells their body, who's into sex work or prostitution or whatever, again, to each their own. I'm not knocking people who build around that. I'm looking more at the wounded aspect of that and how people have built around it, how it's showing you how it affects not only you, but how it affects other people in the proximity of that. And so how that, if you don't have a way of trying to maintain that or balance it, it can have an effect and ruin things around you. Again, when there's not structure, that feminine archetype that is in balance with something begins to smother or begins to drown out everything else. That's what an addiction is. The addiction itself drowns out everything else that is important. So that's why I realized, like, even from what I've learned behavior patterns of how I saw people interact through relationships and so forth, I didn't have the awareness on how me developing that pattern would destroy that which I was trying to build on. It's just like trying to go in a relationship, but you're not having any idea of what it is to sustain it. You're just going off of what you've learned. So for instance, coming from environments or structures like, the old world narrative of like manipulation, deception, and control and stuff like that, notice how relationships that were created on that. Notice how even karmically, from my experience, how I told myself I could have probably, if it was in the stars or aligned, I probably would have had way more babies than I could have kept up with, just simply because of what I was leading with. So I'm saying this to say this, it's just like men, young people, the mindfulness of what you've learned and how important it is to adults or people who are still coming into this awareness of what you've learned and learned behavior and how important child development is, because you drag this. Even when you're unconscious, you carry it, but then when it becomes over women, you begin to drag it. You begin to drag it unconsciously into relationships or into dynamics and so forth without unpacking it. That's why I feel like carrying certain things generationally becomes overwhelming, becomes so much of a load, is because eventually what ends up happening is that you begin to drag it. And then it becomes it starts to affect not only your spiritual well-being, your emotional and mental and physical. So now, this is where you see a lot of people eventually into their adulthood, they start to look like that which they've carried and or dragged along for so long. So for me, again, lust, acknowledging of everything, like when you're building towards something, you expose yourself to you. Whatever you were exposed to in childhood exposes itself into adulthood. So for me, I don't have shame and guilt around the fact that I was like, wow. I can honestly say now, honoring the fact of I can have what is, called a high sex drive, or some may say creative energy, a lot of that stuff. Either way, there's a discipline to where as you gradually start to discipline or balance out your life, where you, like I said, where I went from overextending, overgiving, giving so much of myself in certain relationships, whether that's emotionally, mentally, sexually, and so forth, it still ended in some type of self-sabotage. It still ended in a way that was similar to another previous relationship or dynamic. The energy still came. Whatever I did not face, whatever was unresolved, I dragged it until I got to a place where now, seeing the bigger picture, I can honestly say my lust led me to what most people won't acknowledge is you karmically creating a version of yourself. That lust will lead you to creating another version of yourself, meaning not just physically, but I'm talking about a child. Now imagine if we had someone tell us the importance of because again, what we were introduced to young, it's okay, yeah, don't do nothing, go out there, hit as many, it's possible, da 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 da. But there was no accountability in the music. There was no accountability in hey bro, there's still a responsibility to that. Now imagine all the people who generationally have created children, and due to the lack of emotional intelligence or the inability to actually mature past whatever emotional development they had or were even offered as a child, you're expecting them to be responsible. There's an expectancy, and I get it. The reason I'm saying this, I get it because for my mothers out there, not only having certain men, having to deal with their own spiritual vices, and I'm not making excuses for them. I'm holding a light or holding a mirror so you can see what most men won't say or don't have the courage to say, which is the fact of they haven't evolved. They won't. They refuse to. They're scared. They're afraid. And it ain't just the physical appearance. It's the little boy in them who never had it offered to them. They never were nurtured. They never were supported. I sat today in the bed and I told myself, I'm like, man, how much I would want or a spouse or a partner, which I was saying to myself, who is this and this and this is this. It's like building a barrel. It's like building someone. But in reality, as I was saying it to myself, I was coming to the realization that the things that I was wanting or feel like in my mind, I was never given. And then not only that, I have to give it to myself. And that's for a lot of us as men who had to parent ourselves. A lot of men will never say they was ready for children. A lot of women were never ready. Imagine people who had to go through, and the reason I'm telling this is a huge generational change, the thing that I'm speaking about, curses being broken. Imagine your grandmother, great-grandmother, someone carrying the spirit of someone else who forced themselves on them. Imagine that. Carrying that pain, that load, they never talked about. And even if they talked about, they never really felt safe again. They never really felt safe or secure again. So then they develop a pattern because, again, through whatever unhealthy feminine archetype that they received, they only knew to create more of the dysfunction or create more of a cycle or pattern, which is having children, but never really facing or having the opportunity to sit down or face their stuff. So again, I'm not blaming, I'm not pointing the finger, I'm pointing out patterns or learned behavior to where a lot of our mothers didn't have the opportunity, whether they were pressured or whether they probably went through something traumatically in their experience. Some of them could have been, SA, sexually, SM, molested, something. And what that did, again, this, in their way, that's a deep psychological, traumatic experience, painful experience that as you learn more about the human behavior and learn behavior patterns and the psychological aspect of things and how the brain operates and how the body has kept the score, you're telling a grandmother, great-grandmother generationally who would have never thought certain men or certain things would have happened to them, whether it's a child or even into adulthood. And then for the safety, for the protection of the family, they said nothing, they sat back. They even feared being unalive. They feared even their foundations, because probably they didn't have the finances or they didn't have the money and so forth. This has been a pattern. It just has looked a different way. It's an energy that has been carried. And so this is a thing that's never told. You still carry it. You just never acknowledged it. You never acknowledged it. Because I'm pretty sure there's a high percentage of where sometimes where the mother has went through something like that, it typically, like, I don't know what that is. I don't know if it's like scientific or generational, that most likely sometimes the daughter unfortunately goes through something similar. That's why there's so many cases or so many incidents of sexual abuse that goes unnoticed. Think about people that never said nothing, but then carry this along so much into their relationships. Never ever really feeling safe with their partner, but never ever really feeling safe with themselves to even express what has happened to them. Then dealing with the ones that having to have created children from this pain, from this trauma, and so forth. So now, not only have they suppressed it, they've repressed it more and more. And so the reason why, again, I'm speaking about that spirit of lust is like, it's what a child is introduced to early. And then not only that, the media, the thing, again, for me, myself, it gets louder and louder. Like when you're trying to focus, notice how I've noticed, like when I've tried to focus more on building whatever it is I'm towards and so forth, yo, it's like a tug of war between like trying to, like when you're like an alchemist or transmuting like an energy and shit, it's like, bro, that shit will appear or knock so hard to be like, if I could give like imaginary things like this, I know you see me, I know you see me, I'm gonna present this to you, and some people may use the devil as a representation of that, like something presenting itself. And it'll look familiar to what was like that kept that trauma, that pattern going. And again, this is not about getting to a pinnacle or place or like trying to be perfect. No, as the elder one said, once you reach the peak of one mountain, you're at the bottom of another one, meaning that's being a student of life. What I'm sharing is the importance of the fact of like, anytime that you're shifting and trying to change through something, that whichever you're trying to break free from can get louder, can get it, the energy reveals itself from almost like the root of where it stemmed from, meaning like a child, whatever, say if it happened in childhood, that memory, that notice like how you can have a reoccurring dream, or something they call it, or a reoccurring emotion, and you don't know why, or you having this thing come up within you, and you're like, what's going on? I don't know. And it seems like you can't shake free from it. It's because whatever it was rooted in, for one, fear is probably going to be the prominent thing that's going to present itself. What that fear is rooted in will be that root chakra aspect. That fear will be rooted in the survival. So for me, if I could break that down, it's like when I knew I was in relationships, I didn't catch on to this pattern until later. When I knew I was in relationships and only using it to sustain it for how I perform sexually, it was coming from a place of not so much just lust, but a survival instinct. Like I gotta do whatever it can. Notice how someone, y'all use the term as women like cheating. You know, notice how whenever you try to break free in a relationship from something, notice how a person's pattern, like they'll show on the surface like a glimpse of something, but notice how that pattern comes up and reappears. It's because they never did the inner work to fight off whatever inner demon or spirit or whatever you want to call it. They never did the work, inner work, or stay persistent or consistent through it. So what they'll eventually revert back to, through the distortion of the femininity or not really having structure inwardly, they will keep, the pattern will reappear. And that's even the fact of like, I'll even learn through self-abandonment, self-abuse, learning from people who have abusive tendencies and so forth. I'm telling you from experiencing it, and then recreating it, until I had to realize, like, whoa, you know how that person get that aha moment, that insight, like, oh my gosh, I was sitting here thinking it was the other person, when in reality, it's been me. It's been my role of allowing what I've been allowing, or what I've been enabling. And once you pull the plug on that shit, again, you will see that energy resurface. You will see it present itself, no matter how they dress it up in a relationship. You know, cheaters, like, or someone who think they're cheating, because you can't cheat something and think you're going to get past. Eventually, the energy or what's done in the dark will come to light. So, again, I'm just referencing like people who do certain things as such. It just shows the intention behind it, or more so the energy and so forth. And also it reveals of like what's inwardly going on. So with an aspect like that, just staying in something, or even thinking that it's going to change just overnight, that's why during these moments, the shift and so forth, it's very dangerous in on how you have to be very discerning, because of where we're talking about foundations of generations, the world and so forth, that hasn't honored and respected that which is feminine, which gives birth to everything, or had any healthy aspect of that. So when, it doesn't matter if you've been married 40, 50 years, you're talking about the fact of you're wondering why a certain person pattern hasn't changed or will ever change. So when you have people used to what's familiar, they get comfortable. It's almost like I saw a video of a woman that was a hoarder. They get so caught up in, like, so comfortable. The woman had feces and all this stuff around in her home. She was so, I guess you could say, such in a psychosis, or so like so mentally like in illness, or like it's like she didn't want to accept at all. She was so disconnected, or disassociated from the actuality that she was living in it. And see, I feel like that's what has happened, especially with deep programming from childhood into now, is that we've dealt and have been in foundations with people who have been so disassociated from reality, or from their reality or actuality, due to whatever experience they had in childhood, whatever traumas, or something that's blocking them from accepting whatever's not connecting here and in here and so forth, and they can show up differently. So that's something that, again, that people can go through, to where they've been so disassociated. This is which I feel like that's what kind of leads to Alzheimer's or dementia. From a spiritual perspective, it's like people have been, like, something's not connecting psychologically, some neurotransmitter, something's not connecting to where they don't want to connect, and they refuse to. This is where that fear comes in, because of what they're familiar with. That's when survival instinct kicks in. Just like the woman that was a hoarder. The man kept asking her, like, hey, she thinks it's a musty smell or something like this. Her sister told her that, but she was so comfortable, or got so like rooted in whatever she was in, that her mind, her everything was telling her, like, it doesn't stink that bad. It isn't that horrible. It isn't that. And imagine that in relationships, not only with ourselves, when we tell ourselves the harm isn't that bad, the pain isn't that bad. I'm telling you from experience, like, it isn't that horrible. And I forgot what syndrome that is, when you learn to develop, like, is it Stockholm or something, where, you know, over time, where we've learned to, from childhood development, from societal norms, from the world and the structures we learn, or through learned behavior, learn to try to cope and soothe ourselves through the pain, but really have numbed ourselves to just think that it's not that bad. And so with that, what ends up happening, we recycle the same behavior patterns. We end up continue doing the same thing. And so this is what you see develop through childhood into adulthood and so forth. This is what you see in society who believes that certain things that have happened in humanity, oh, it wasn't so bad. No, it's because this is where the empathy comes in, where you don't have an empathetic people, or you don't have people who come from a place of love or have pure intentions and so forth, and where they don't emphasize or know how to, then they're not able to put themselves there. So this is where the disassociation comes in, and this is how you create communities and places and so forth, where no matter what has happened, I'll sympathize, I have compassion, if any, for some, but that's the dissociation, where people dissociate the empathy, having empathy for seeing a people being treated and mistreated, dehumanized, and so forth and so forth. And in the family dynamic, however your family dynamic is, a theme of seeing people being mistreated, humiliated, embarrassed, and so forth, to protect an image, to protect the family legacy, to protect the tradition and so forth, going to the extreme. And so, yeah. And so again, one of the greatest, and as you progress and, learn more about yourself, I start to realize wow, I realized how much I was disassociating or trying to disconnect from the feeling, from the emotion, from the actuality of self-harm, self-hate, certain parts of myself that, again, learning to be in the world but not of it. So with that, you'll realize how much a lot of people in the world, some of them that are on certain platforms, and they're disassociated for real. So when I talk about performance, I'll continue on this. Performing is in a way of learning to dissociate from the actuality of what's really going on. That's seeing people who are classified as crazy and off the rockers, or thrown into a psychiatrical hospital and all this other stuff, because they feel they're going through this and the only outlet is medication and stuff. And again, some people have, that's a very touchy subject for a lot of people, because again, you're talking about the fact of, even I met people on the street or connected with people and realized there's something there. They have some type of sense there. They know something. We don't ask ourselves enough to emphasize enough to where what is really the root cause of that? So, yeah. But again, through coming and getting to this awareness, I realized the power in the discipline, and again, one of my greatest challenges was that of, you can say, lust, and I had to go through celibacy. I had to go through a lot of things pretty much to get to know myself more deeper, to know myself, to get to know me more, to realize what was the root cause of this learned behavior. And when I look at humanity, I look at the world, look at leaderships, you're looking at people that are so disconnected and disassociated from the fact of they don't even realize that. And even if they do, it's you don't care that you will destroy everything around you. Long as but what is that verse? What's happening right now, the shift, the wicked shall not get rest. And that's the thing, that's what's happening. A person that's at peace, and a person that has done the inner work and do these things, as you become more comfortable with yourself and the parts of yourself, you don't lose sleep, you don't lose rest. The world will tell you the opposite. It'll teach people to think you got to lose rest behind the idea because someone doesn't subscribe to what you believe in, your belief system, or certain things and all like that. See, that's the control and manipulation around all the bullshit. It's to convince people that they have to do things a certain way so that what? And then even some people go to the extreme to where they will attack or have attacked people because of it. It shatters their illusion, and also it threatens their foundations. It threatens their system. It threatens their illusion that they want to cast amongst people. I mean, it's the same thing in the family dynamic, even on a grander scale. You will have people because they feel that, again, what's inwardly attacking them. They come out and feel like they have to attack the very person because their inability to connect deeper, to emphasize, and to connect to which that is of a higher power or the bigger picture. So anything to not connect to that for some people, not all, they will. Some people will go to the extremes to try to remove, that person. You see this happens a lot in family dynamics and so forth, to where people they'll use that aspect of like trying to, in a sense of feeling a sense of empowerment, they'll try to get people to side with them. You see that a lot, to where, again, growing up in a society where this versus thing, again, that screams imbalance. That screams no structure, because if you feel threatened, that means you have no sense of stability or being rooted in whatever truth that you have. If you're feeling threatened by someone else, that shows that that reveals that energy of what you truly never had structure. That's what you're seeing happening around the world, is that, even I learned that so I use my relationships to where, as I start fighting off things or just realizing like, let's say, again, the spirit of lust, it's like once I start pulling back in certain connections, it collapsed the whole foundation. It showed me what it was built on, because again, during a time where I didn't know how to do things, or I felt like that was all that is, that's what I led with. So think about what you lead with, leadership. So when you think about leadership in the world and so forth, whatever people are doing, there's an intention behind it. There's an energy behind it. Whether a malevolent aspect or a benevolent aspect, there's an intention behind it that, again, whatever they try to build structurally will be met with whatever force. And that's what's happening right now. You're seeing a balance, the scales being balanced, so that which it seems like it was in the favor of other people or whatever it is, and you standing up in your truth, and you taking back your power, and you choosing to do something different, you balance things. That's what happens when your karma plays out in people's life, or certain things with people. It's just like, you come as karma, I come as karma, we learn lessons. There's something to learn regardless, in whatever it is. And so that's what I realized, like, and again, a lot of connections or a lot of things I was performing. I was trying to perform. I was trying to do things that, when I stopped trying to focus on performing, or feeling like I was coming, which again, performing is another description as like a survival instinct. That's why you will see a lot of people going back to, like I said, what the collapse is happening right now. I tell you about like the wounded masculine, the performing aspect of that is like seeing people do anything to get people to see them, to feel validated, to feel accepted, and so forth, to side with them, and that's the thing where you'll see desperate attempts on your character, desperate attempts on trying to devalue, dehumanize you, whether in a family dynamic, globally, and so forth. Like, a lot of this shit just pretty much prepares like someone such as myself to where it doesn't matter what happened, authenticity can be threatened. So that's the thing that is being exposed. Anything that's inauthentic, or not built upon truth, the veil is lifted to where it will be exposed. Structures that have been in place that have not been built upon authenticity, truth, and so forth shall be exposed. Corporations, business, family dynamics, it doesn't matter who it is. No one's exempt. because the evolution is already here, the shift is already here, and so forth. And so that's something again, if you're in a relationship dynamic, and as soon as it's almost like you start choosing yourself. That's what the shift is also about. When people are choosing to evolve, they're just choosing themselves. When they're going away from systems, when they're going away from no longer resonates, they're going inward. They're choosing self. They're choosing something different. When you have a system that has been built upon control, capitalism, manipulation, deception, the powers that ain't it used to be, all that, when you're talking about what they led with, and then you start seeing people, choose themselves and rise, and then what does that tell you? It shows you, again, the rebellion and all of that. One moment. So yeah, this is another thing, and it's not nothing to be scared or threatened by. This is going to be the beauty of walking in authenticity, is that it cannot be threatened. And see, that's the difference between living in authenticity, which is a higher truth, or and so forth. There were times where, again, as you're building stuff, I used to be so afraid of man, how, how the world, how are people going to think about me? That shit don't matter. How do you think about you? How do you feel about you? Does it even matter how people feel about you? Because again, when you're talking about performance, why did I even put? When you're talking about performance, you cannot overlook the fact of, for one, most of adults, if not all, especially baby boomers and a lot of millenniums that are unaware, a lot of people, Gen Z, or those who came after baby boomers, a lot of them, honestly, whether they are aware of it or not, they too are, again, they don't come to this awareness, but they've been performing as well, because they've been performing in a world and in structures that gave them a blueprint to do so. So now what the insight or enlightenment comes is that they're realizing all this stuff that they try to accomplish in performing, which is deeply rooted in survival, they're realizing it's not adding the fuck up. They're realizing the math ain't mathing, or they're realizing that what was built before them was only to sustain them for so long. And what I mean by that is when you're building something that's not teaching a people to be self-sufficient, then what you're doing is you're just breadcrumbing them, or the system just give you just as much just to get by, just for you to continue to go through a loop of what? Another fucking cycle of survival. A survival mentality. And everyone's survival is different, because let me tell you this, even though you're not of a person that, let's say you grew up in something different, this shift is happening collectively in humanity globally. So no one's exempt. No one's exempt. What happened in America affects every country. Because of what? Because our ancestors and people that came before us have already been migrating, have already been trading, have already been doing this. Now that what's exposed is that you're seeing people, not just individually, but you're seeing globally it start to happen when it comes to again, people no longer wanting to live in this survival, in this illusion of what's been cast, in this confusion of, not being able to live in their sovereignty, or their birthright to live in abundance, their children to be able to not be indoctrinated. So many different things, because again, it just reveals the lower nature, or the survival instinct. Because when you look at economics, and when you start to look at safety, and matter of fact, I forgot I had the laptop. This is gonna be even better. When you look at root chakra. Okay. firm foundation. So when you look at the root chakra again, firm foundation or stability. I need descriptions. Again, everything beginning with a root. So the base of the spine, survival, vitality, stability, and security. So I mentioned before, and it's so interesting because the reason I was mentioning my battle with lust is like the very thing, that connection to that, because the root chakra is so significant with that, and also the sacral and solar plexus, is because I'm gonna be honest, I feel like the reason why a lot of men and or people have not progressed but will eventually, or in the process of that, the wheel is turning, is because they were never, notice how when you talk about resources now, if you just think, like for y'all, if you think that people, whatever they have connected to or come into in a spiritual aspect, if you think that a part of their resources aren't having, things connected to spirituality, the chakra system, notice that, because notice how they have, people of certain complexions. Notice how when you look at things, I'm gonna use the term whitewash. Notice how even in that sector of things, spiritually and so forth, how it's portrayed, or they even try to make it seem like they were the ones that created it. But in the ancient texts or things, looking at the fact of the origins of things, most and all of those teachers organically, their skin color was darker. So this is why I express to people that the shift in the root chakra aspect, and look who has suffered from security, survival, stability the most: indigenous people. So what is happening is that, again, coming along and realizing this is, even people who try to think that they were outsourcing people or giving their resources, or they felt like through their abuse of power to feel like they have to have certain things that no one else couldn't. This is where the judgment comes in. This is where karma comes around to realize, like, uno reverse, mother, uno reverse. And this is the beauty of what Bobby Hemmett, these teachers that come along and say, this is one of the grandest ages to live in, because that which was hidden can be hidden no more. The veil is lifted. Even those spiritualists, teachers, and people who came along in their falsehood, who just gave you, who gave you this, but then hid this part of it. There's no difference in people coming along and trying to give you a story, a saturated story of this is how your people were, but not give you the parts of this is what led up to your people being in mental captivity, or this is what led up to this. There's no difference in what people are about to go through now. See, that oversaturated shit with slavery is y'all don't realize, like, it's a mental thing, like Rest in Power, Bob Marley. These people energy lives on. It's mental captivity. It's in self-imprisonment. Arrested development. Think about that. Arrested development. When you have locked down things within your mind and in your body and so forth. Where you thought that you were more concerned on getting things physically when you were never being fed spiritually. See, that which people assume that they kept from you, the divine is going to give it to those who won't abuse it. This is the new leadership on the rise. And then through their journey, they shall be divinely guided and protected. And whomever shall come up towards them, what they say, touch not my anointed, do my prophets no harm. Y'all look at prophet as if it's just a man thing. There's prophetess. Just like when you see chief, there's chiefess. There's everything that you see physically, there's an opposition to it. Or there's an opposing energy force to it, a feminine archetype. It doesn't matter what you see here. So again, when you look at the fact of if balance, now look at this, it says root chakra, base of the spine, survival, vitality, stability, security. Security, if balance, now watch this. Security, humility, grounded, stable, energetic, optimal. Look at weight, optimal weight, healthy eating, proper elimination. Now let me tell you one thing I've learned about this. When you look at the powers that ain't, used to be the attack on, for one, not security, not just only security, but notice how it says healthy eating. Notice what people have been giving so they don't process stuff. Because the thing about this was so vital is that if you have been given a nation or people, especially indigenous people, feeding them poison, feeding them so many different things, which keeps them energetically blocked or unbalanced and stable, that keeps them in a place of disassociation, not feeling that they feel seen, because a lot of what also the root chakra is that when you are grounded, it's not that you, like a tree doesn't fight to be seen. It knows that it's there, it's rooted. It relies on its roots. And when you look at what has happened through humanity, especially in the last 50, 100 years or last, in centuries or whatever, when you see a certain people who, not all, because again, there's certain hands you don't see that are darker, or people are part of certain things of all different shades. When you are seeing how, what type of people, their security is being attacked, that means economically. Root chakra represents security inwardly and outwardly. And then also what they're being fed. What this does is that it's not just indigenous people. It's certain people in certain communities where, again, certain systems that keep them from stability, longevity. When you talk about stability, when you're talking about security, that's something that's stable, not temporary systems, not things that keep them unstable and imbalanced. When unbalanced, you feel fear, anxiety, unstable, insecure, low self-esteem, over or underweight, constipation. Now, the reason this is not an attack on anybody that's bigger and so forth, but it's very significant. I've been coming across videos like that of people who are like the 600-pound life and so forth, and yet we don't learn how to emphasize and realize, like, do you not realize that's a psychological thing? That's a root chakra thing? That's an insecurity? That's a psychological thing to where in their mind, they don't want to move. It's a deep thing to where this person, whatever traumatic experience or whatever is lingering and so forth, whatever childhood development and so forth, eating disorder, dis-ease, discomfort, whatever they're trying to do, they're trying to eat the pain away. And what this does is that it goes back to the fact of them being so disassociated that they don't even feel secure. They don't feel stable. So they'll do anything to feel that, given, like, in eating, this sister was saying how, like, and it's similar to people who even, some people may not like it, but it is what it is. It's like bodybuilding or build muscle. That is another form of trying to protect. It's coming from an insecure place. They're trying to build muscle to block out, or like a shield. It's similar to someone who overeats. It's like a way to that they don't want to feel. They want to feel numb. So they overeat and get to this place of, not even being balanced or stable inside, so it reflects outwardly. So, and then again, think about it talks about constipation. I've been noticing that even with the fact of how a lot of things that I've been speaking about, how my body changes when things are unblocked, how I speak up, how I noticed that even with my mom, I noticed that even with a lot of people, some of your people who deal with, what do you call that? ulcers my mom dealt with, a lot of things in the womb space, in the lower chakra, you know, a lot of things dealing with the constipation, like being backed up. What else? Again, they'll call it cancer in the medical term of prostate. But a lot of this stuff, people who have hemorrhoids, a lot of this stuff is energetic blocks. A lot of stuff is a lot of fear. These things show up in the body energetically. The people who have anxiety, feeling unstable, never feeling stable in life. So again, how that can look for people who don't look like you, who have created systems or who have created structures built off self-hatred. Guess what would be the threat for that? Love, authenticity. Anything that exposes and shake their foundation it's giving false stability, because it's not something that's built off, for one, humility, security, groundedness, healthy. And this goes back to even people who, you know, think about the monetary system. All of these things represent an energy. Now think about people who haven't had, majority of people who haven't had access to things that are healthy. I mean, you can go right to another fucking community. They got more healthier stuff. Like when it comes to fruits and all that other stuff, you're like, what the fuck going on? All of this was orchestrated to keep not just people, but different hues of people or humanity, you know, unstable, fearing. Food stamps for one. A lot of stuff keep people fearing, keeping them in an anxiety. You know, keeping them, think about low self-esteem. You know, whoa, that's been a big thing through humanity. Because for one, low self-esteem can look like, again, people who have to portray how stable they are. That really highlights how unstable that they really are. If you got to prove how stable you are through your money, through even building communities, whether you hide it or not, because I'm telling you, I've been around people who have, again, the energy shows up. It's the same energy, y'all. It just looks fucking different. America is experiencing a cleansing of a root chakra aspect collectively, and that shows up differently in people of certain demographics. You could have grew up in a family that wasn't financially stable, right? So guess what you have to navigate and go through? An experience of because the stability also is connected to emotional security. Now, when you see how people are, once you start to learn, once you start to, this is even deeper. Once you start to realize like how so much things are coming out of a certain people in America who they built stability. But when I tell y'all that they were never empathetic, they were never stable inwardly in their inner world. So due to their destructive or violent behavior, not all, but you know where I'm getting at, due to the fact of like why they display their behavior like this, is because I said before, for one, security, but it shows a lack of insecurity, you know, physical identity, instability. So if you have created something from the intention behind the energy, or when you created something that you know that you have performed or projected to the world as illusion that you're stable, but in reality, inwardly, you're not. What ends up eventually what eventually starts to reveal itself is how unstable you are as a human being. Now, again, we've been told, especially, I'm just giving an example of indigenous people, how the narrative have been painted how unstable we are. If you go to the origins of things, we created and built. Now, due to the fact of the reign of terror or the connections into how certain things came in and certain people came about, not all people, because again, this is people of all shade. It's just the fact of what people were exposed to, now people who are power driven, which is a form of, again, insecurity. It shows how unstable they are. I'm letting you know this about feminine and masculine energies. It's to where when you see a man wanting to control a woman or control a narrative, when you see a society wanting to control the narrative of people, how they eat, how they are source things, how they receive things, and so forth, then you have generations of people, let's say in the country, who are lighter shade, who take on this narrative that people like that deserve that treatment, but don't acknowledge and emphasize that it's like you're okay with them being treated like this, but then when the tables are turned, the empathy that you didn't have for them, you wanting them to have for you. So again, it all mirrors back the unstableness that what this country, even though it was initiated and created on certain things, it was not built truly on security, groundedness, stableness, things that were healthy. So anything that's not healthy is going to reveal itself. If you look at America, or you look at this country, or you look at certain places, and you see it as one body, one mind, the organs that are in place. And then imagine people represent certain organs, like I'm telling you how they represent certain chakras, certain energetic aspects, right? So what ends up happening when you try to control that, or this isn't getting this blood, or this isn't getting this, and this isn't getting that, what ends up happening, it affects the well-being, not only for you, it affects everybody. Because see, some people in this country who don't believe that they have lived in a certain privilege or lived in a certain way, it shows their disassociation. It shows their mental disorder. It shows their mental illness. It shows also their lack of empathy. It also is going to reveal how unbalanced that they are because of what they haven't faced within. To the world, they're stable. To the world, they have all these luxuries. To the world. But how did you get it? You came through again, the generations that were a part of things, baby boomers and so forth, that, again, a lot of what they built, a lot of your ancestors, a lot of people that migrated here, y'all built shit off survival. You had to come in to build from stability. A lot of people don't realize, a lot of people came to build it. Now, this is where the issue lies. This is where it becomes problematic. Is that when you threaten, unalive, and remove people for your stability. Where's the humility in that? Where's the groundedness in that? Where's the stableness in that? And see, what also eventually, what I realized was peaking is that if the root chakra is unbalanced, you feel insecure and fear and anxiety. Now, how can people who have built structures, how can you have so much fear around people who don't look like you? Not all, but how can you have so much fear around what they're capable of doing? How can you be so insecure? How can you display so much unstableness? If you built so much, this great country, if you built and don't even acknowledge, how are you have such low self-esteem that you try? Oh, I get it. Performing. The structures you built, again, has been on performing. And this is why so much has for once have tried to be kept away. But you see it revealed. For people to sit here, if you're so grounded and stable, why do you have to perform and prove to anybody in the world that you're stable? Why? Because what that really shows is how insecure people really are, and the structures and what we've been groomed to believe what stability actually is. Again, a tree doesn't have to prove that it's a tree. It doesn't have to prove that it's a fruit. That its fruit is good or bad. It hasn't proved that. Only way you find out and connect is through connection or through experience. Oh my gosh. Now imagine if you saw everybody in your life as a tree, especially adults or certain people. And then you start to realize that through their actions and through what they do, look at their fruit. Now, I'm going back to this, the stableness. The reason why I'm talking about this is because when you have had a country that, again, or the energy that's been pushed on so many things to deceive and distract and manipulate and control and all these other things, that will reveal to you what structure that you're going to build on and build towards. And the reason I say this goes back to the fact of like when I was talking about how one of my greatest lessons was to see that even when I was unconscious of what I was leading with, it brought me to a place of realizing like you have the opportunity. So for instance, like I talk about being a fashion model and doing all this other stuff, I was insecure. I didn't have no sense of trying to stabilize stuff. For one, let's go to another thing. Even the fear of what was passed on of being a man that's darker, indigenous, and so forth. The anxiety around, what else? The anxiety around not having enough, not feeling stable, low self-esteem and having to rebuild that. What else? At a time where I remember I used to lift, try to get so big and try to build on muscle to perform, to look a certain way. All of these things was just mirroring back, like, again, the emotional aspect, the insecurity from that, the mental, the anxiety around performing. What it was revealing for me, for myself, is how coming from generations or coming from a mother and father who, if I can look at their life and look at their behavior patterns, I realized like my mother was never stable. She could never sustain something for so long. She could, no matter what she did, it just revealed, I tell you, the distorted mother, the wounded masculinity, but it also revealed the fact of even like, I told you like how I would see her do certain things young, like the combativeness, didn't matter what home she had. I'm just expressing the behavior. I'm looking at the behavior, the energy, not just so much the person. It was showing the instability, like unstableness in her mental, emotional, and physical state. Same thing with my father. It didn't, and that's how I'm gonna show you how it shows up for your father, no matter their creed, culture, nationality, whatever. It doesn't matter how far people move away in what they build on. They can move away. They can move away, and what life again was show them is like whatever they was trying to not build on then, they have an opportunity to build on now. It still doesn't remove the fact of they still can be battling with certain things that will keep them eventually attracting or connecting to the same women if they did build on something. It's emotions, things, subconscious fears, a lot of things will still be revealed. It didn't matter what housing, how much money they obtained and so forth. What is the intention? What was the mission behind it? And this says a lot about leadership. No matter what type of man, no what type of person and so forth, it's the leadership behind it. It's the intention, it's the energy behind it. And so that's why you see, no matter, again, whoever you're representing, your patriarch and so forth, what's happening right now, a lot of them, their foundations inwardly is threatened. And it has nothing to do with nobody else. So when you see the corporations and the business and the global structures are collapsing, it's because that's a collective thing happening. And also first it's an individual thing. So this is how I was able to even point out the fact of like, even the fact of like how someone can move away, someone can do things, they still have to find a balance. It still can reveal through if their first chakra or their root chakra is balance. Because what it does, if it's not balanced and whatever comes up, whatever surfaces, it still can determine the outcome of whatever physical stability they have. And the reason I say that is because you're seeing it play out now. Again, it's how people built things and how they came into it. If it was truly sustainable, if it was truly stable, if it was truly built on genuineness and so forth, and a sense of security, because when you think about safety and economics, when you talk about the root chakra, a lot of that reflects the fact of how people have been living and what was being attacked to. Because when you think about like the removal of a father or removal of certain things in certain dynamics, whether a family dynamic or certain things, it's a spiritual thing first. Because people think that when people went through certain things, the humiliation wasn't just physical. It was a spiritual thing first. So that's why you can see a lot of people or see the fact of, again, you can have men who have built they can make millions. I don't care how much money they made from it. When you look at the fact of on an energetic level of how they built it, it didn't matter how long and whatever they built. For a lot of your fathers, for a lot of your ancestors, for a lot of the generations, they never told you that they built it from an insecure place or fear or survival. Like they literally built it from a place of not having. And so their greed and gluttony shows up with obtaining things so much that they feel like they never had enough. So again, that's not stableness. That's nothing stable with that. So what ends up happening is that the very thing they built it on is the very thing that's going to destroy it. And this is why, again, how the false sense of empowerment when it comes to patriarchal and matriarchal, or, the divine feminine masculine aspect, is that to the world, they will give off this illusion that they're stable. But it's a clear indication right now that you see what's happening right now. There has nothing that has been stable or secure about not only the dehumanization and the devaluing of women indigenously, men, or just any human being. It shows, again, in leadership what people have led with, what they're leading with, and their fear of their foundation crumbling. So now, not only does that reveal like a sense of low self-esteem, it really shows now, as people become more in tune, it really shows like people were never stable from again, also the root chakra represents like your physical identity. So when you see like people's character and everything else, it shows like, it really reflects like, this is their identity. This is who they are. They really don't feel a sense of groundedness. That's why they have to tell you so much of what they do, how they do it, how they can lay it down, how they can perform, all these things that are not truly coming from a secure place. And so that's been one of the greatest deceptions like that's been given to so many people. That's why a lot of people feel like money, again, if you're coming from a place of, I've seen people who, let's say their generations, how they accumulated things. But again, I tell you, it's how it was built. When you say how something was built, that means it has to come from a place. The idea, you have to plant seeds. That means the root of something. You have to build it upon some type of sense of morality, values, core values, whatever was at that core value of that person. that pretty much is the energy that's going into whatever they're creating. Now, when the root chakra is blocked, it's also mentioned how anxiety, uncertainty, loss of interest, insecurity, restlessness, lack of energy, lack of identity, self-esteem, depression, and sometimes unaliving thoughts. Because again, that's a huge theme around mental health, because a lot of people who struggle through suicide, and so forth, they don't feel rooted in their identity or their self-expression. They don't feel grounded in who they are. And that can stem from a lot of what they have repressed or suppressed, or what they went through in childhood, or even generationally, because of, especially of people who haven't feel seen, or feel a sense of validation, or feel a sense of belonging. I don't say validation, a sense of belonging. And so that's why I realized how much the powers that ain't with so many things that have attacked almost like the root chakra of not only the men, but also the women. Because the importance of that is that men can display being ruled by Mars. Like they can display their sense of identity, self-esteem, surety completely different than a woman would. And now the importance of that, I'm getting clarity of this. When the root chakra is attacked in the woman or the mother, stability, security, economically, socially, and so forth, this is again dynamic things that have siphoned the energy of women, or like continue to have them wanting to create or build towards systems where they don't realize energetically or spiritually that they're giving their energy to, they're pouring into things that will never stabilize them physically. It's something, again, that's why everything's began maternal and matriarchally, that again, when you attack the root chakra of women, and then what you see portrayed in the world, or, oh my gosh, the clarity I'm getting, the fucking backfire is gonna be so wild. When you attack the root chakra of the foundations of a country that was built upon indigenous women, or women that were of darker shade, scientific, like this is just what it is, the origins of it. When you attack that, and then men are put in place in pedestals to make sure, that's why I tell y'all about y'all leadership, about certain men, boy, the judgment that are coming to men who are in place right now, who proclaim and even want to represent themselves, whether sports, whether whatever it is, who don't emphasize with women and children and see them live in a state of restlessness, because see, this is the root chakra, a state of low self-esteem, uncertainty, and so forth, and how these systems have siphoned that shit to keep that shit stable. The reason is this is the rise of the feminine archetype, the divine mother. Unapologetically, that ain't taking no shit. When you see these men that are in place like that again have built from a place of uncertainty. See, this is where the misconception comes from. They have built from a place of uncertainty. They have divided themselves from not only the woman, but what that has done is they develop a fucking identity, a false sense of power. They built a false sense of power and went away from developing a sense of empowerment, because the root chakra, you develop an identity. See, now I guarantee you the climate right now of a lot of people, I don't care if they're billionaires, I don't care what shade, I don't care what leadership, I don't care what country and so forth. Their fears, because again, root chakra fears, whether subconscious and so forth, I guarantee you they're restless right now. I'm looking at the words because it represents the fact of the uncertainty of they don't know what's to come. And then some they do, because they know that their time is up. So also, you realize like when you pay attention to the leadership and so forth, they don't have a sense of like self. Like when you look at emotional empathy, they don't have a sense of a self. They've lost sight of self. When you lose sight in the grasp of the feminine archetype, you will see men go off. And this is why women naturally through leadership, or they hold a capacity of holding emotional resonance, or they have a bigger capacity, or can hold or navigate things through leadership differently than men, even if not better. And so with that doesn't exclude certain leadership with men. It shows you that, again, women initiate men. Women enable men. Women encourage men. And that can be from a place of enabling them through their fucking dysfunction. What you see displayed in leadership right now is a display of what the the distorted mother, the women, again, who stand behind men who are corrupted. Their hearts are corrupted. Their hands have blood on them. Their hearts are, so many things blocked within them. And again, through their delusion, the women that support them are going to suffer right along with them. Because when that man, that leadership and all that shit start to crumble, when he become restless because he don't have a sense of security, everything that he built, or this stuff, like, and I'm talking about all levels, family dynamics, everything that he's built financially, mentally, so forth, and all that, you will see depression set in. You will see low self-esteem. You will see that the identity that he built, there's no substance in it. You will begin to see his insecurities peak. You will begin to realize, because he has nothing, due to the fact that what he has produced that has been rotten, and whatever it was rooted in has affected everything around him. Not only will he destroy everything around him through his inability to find a sense of self and security, his disconnection from the feminine archetype, from his emotions, will begin to again implode and then explode on other people, because he will destroy through his actions. So only thing y'all gotta do is sit back and allow this false sense of patriarchal destroy itself, along with the women who enabled it. That's what y'all don't realize. A lot of you had the opportunity to change the trajectory or go along with whatever the fuck is going out. The trash is being thrown out. And I guarantee you, a lot of women that are behind them are right now questioning everything. Questioning everything. It don't even matter how much amount of money he got. No matter the house. None of that material shit. Because you're going to realize his identity was rooted in ugly stuff that was not built on empathy and integrity. You're going to realize his core values were never rooted in things that was authentic. He or she has got so consumed by their money, by material things, by whatever it is, that now he has to perform. He goes out here and perform. That's why you see a lot of men who don't have a sense of self. They perform for other men. They don't have a sense, they're not rooted in integrity. They're not rooted in love. They're not rooted in truth. They don't have nothing rooted. So guess what? That's why they'll play small. That's why even in sports and shit, even in a lot of places and stuff, they'll perform and portray, but deep down, bro, I see so much the thin line between the fact of a lot of those dudes are part of whatever it is, coaching. They look at these guys as this leaders. And then some of them, their false sense of power, this identity that they built, is either my way or no way. Until a CEO, until someone else higher up comes in and say, hold on, you're not bigger than the program. So imagine that. And there's no difference out in the world what you're seeing right now. Everyone who's trying to portray themselves to be bigger than the program is going to realize the program going to show you on a macro level, and a micro and a macro level, you ain't bigger than this shit. So again, at a point in time with a material person, a material men and women and people who, again, it seemed like they had it all together, boo-boo, until divine intervention comes in. Divine intervention is like, hold on, let me show you these people. This is what they've been doing on their way up. They've stepped on people. They manipulated. They've tried to do this. They've tried to do that to get by. They've tried to do all these other things. Let me show you why they built that corporation. To make sure certain people come in and out. Let me show you what it was never rooted in anything of integrity, of in truth, and so forth. So now, guess where you're going to see the silent panic. This is where you're going to see the restlessness that comes in, where a lot of things are crumbling that'll be affected. And now all of a sudden, you're not able to pay the bills. You're not able to do this. You're not able to do a lot of things because there's a higher power on the rise. So that goes back to what I was saying, like people loving to see people. Y'all been clapping. You've been behind the scenes clapping and supporting the detriment and all these things of other people, not realizing your ass finna get a taste of your own medicine. The same poison you were serving people. Come on now. Y'all don't realize how karma returns to people. You didn't have a lot, like it's so funny, you didn't have a problem with people living in what they were living in. As long as you benefit off of it, right? That's why I keep telling you the judgment they're coming to a lot of people of all, I'm talking about the exposure on all levels of people who just assume that nothing will happen. Again, look at their false sense of identity that they've created, their false sense of power. I've seen it happen, like even with people who, again, who come off as like they have it all together. And then as I start to learn deeper and get more awareness and through divine intervention, it was really revealing that a lot of how they migrated here, a lot of people who came here, they jumped on the bandwagon. They was okay with being $5 Indians. They was okay with building identities around, what was the other one? Like trying to build an identity around something that was never rooted in truth. Imagine that. Imagine all the shit you built and you realizing now the root chakra of all of this is just going to expose everything that you was just trying to, basically exposing your lack of identity. And that's why you realize, like, when you hear a lot of people say, man, shit, we don't went through everything, we don't survive everything. It was just showing you, like, how can people just assume that a people that is organic to a world, a earth, and that even though they may have did things, went through their trials and tribulations, because a lot of people just going through karma that they have to clear and to balance things out. But how can you think that in our survival through things that I feel like the greatest fear from other people, the opposition, the opposing energy, was for people to gain a sense of identity or to never reconnect ancestrally to their what connected them to the land. Because you gotta realize that's a part of reconstructing, restoring the root chakra for a lot of people that are indigenous. For a lot of people who didn't have knowledge of where they come from, matriarchal and patriarchal, even people that are a lot of shade too, because you don't even realize you've been bamboozled the most. For a lot of you literally, like, the thing that for some is like y'all literally built these things and you didn't build it from a confident place. You didn't really, a lot of things was just built for, some of y'all just came here just for your ancestors to survive, to live, to thrive. And they knew that. That's the stories they never tell you about. People who migrated here, they relocated to build, to expand their generations and lineage. People got greedy. That's what you gotta realize, the abuse of power that was. People got greedy. People assumed that they were more powerful and do this and do that. They want to control this resource. They want to do this. And this is darker shaded people that had their hand in this shit. When you come in other lands and you slaughter people and whatever you do, and you, most importantly, attack the women. And that's what I was getting back to. Like when you realize like how the thing, the origins of energy being broke down, like royal energy, the mother, son, father, daughter. And then if a nation can rise no higher than its woman, or especially you connect the daughter to that feminine archetype that begins with her, that is the first teacher. How can you expect a nation to progress if you're not supporting all women, especially indigenous women, to the fucking land? How y'all gonna expect this bitch to progress? If she's not being fed, not only spiritually, but if she's not being supported from all people. Isn't that what she did? Isn't this what she's done to sustain her? See, now that she's tired and frustrated, after all this, after her root chakra being attacked, you gotta realize her root chakra, anxiety, uncertainty of where she's gonna live, how she's gonna obtain money, the loss of interest, insecurities, relentlessness, the lack of energy, lack of identity. If I look at any person, depression, if I look at any person, and this is outside of me having children by a woman of a lighter shade, you know, just outside of all of that, it's not to say people haven't dealt with these things that I've listed. When I look at the origins of what has happened and the attack on women that are darker, that are indigenous and so forth. And then also women that are lighter shade, I don't care what nationality you are, in your inability to support these women. And then some of y'all have been a part of, whether you know it or not. And I know you gotta realize like how you've been tricked in your supporting through the medical system, in your supporting through whatever your father built, in your supporting even through you're not even wanting to deal with women that are indigenous or darker shade. For people who proclaim to be native, in your breadcrumbing, in your supporting the dysfunction, because you want to, because I'm calling y'all out, because you want to enable the man that's considered of a lighter shade, pale or white, his system, his structure. In your supporting that, you just collected more karma. How are you think you're gonna dog out the woman or the women who, if they stop everything they fucking do right now, none of this would exist. Along with their sons, such as myself, indigenous men. This is for all women. I don't care what nationality you are. Of lighter shade, who you knowingly play a role in what? Making sure your kids eat. And you have no empathy for that woman down the street that don't have, like, what? This is not all of you, but you know who you are. And then you think that for once you've been tricked into believing that this man that you have let rule, that you put in position and enable, these men who are immature little boys emotionally, who can't maintain their emotions, who don't even honor nothing feminine. So these men who don't even like you or don't even support any of what you're doing, because as soon as you get to a place where you feel like you have more power to them or than them,
because they never supported anything that honors the feminine archetype and stuff like. What makes you think that they're going to let you become bigger than them? What makes you think they're going to place you in positions that honor anything that supports women and children? So you can sit here and portray. The circus has went on so long that you realize you've been supporting the fucking clown and clowns. And that goes for women too. They're indigenous too. It just looks just a little different. You supporting, you enabling the men never to really follow their purpose or destiny, but you know your intuition, like, I'm going to support his music, or I'm going to support this, or I'm going to support this, knowing that when it comes to anything being a part of those things systematically, that creates whether more oppression or you being unorganized or you being not having anything stable, or you know that for certain, because you know that what he's trying to do, whether it's you enabling him to sell more drugs or to scam and do all these other things, and you lay down at night knowing, because you've had to do this and grandma had to do this, you knowing that you have been the backbone regardless of the fact of, you know what this nigga finna do ain't gonna fall through. It ain't structured. It ain't built on nothing stable. For one, he ain't faced anything. And then he's just mocking and following. It shows no type of leadership. He's just following the crowd or following the next, wanting to be the next basketball superstar, football superstar. Y'all gotta realize this ain't nothing but another run or energy to where as this shit collapses, as the power shifts, because these are the same structures that have used and abused your sons to build whatever they're doing. Some may call it modern day mental slavery or physical labor, capitalism. And again, knowing that, that's why they quick to come to your neighborhood, to your games, to scout your son, to build, again, more on their image, which again, knowingly most of these sons that come out of there have no sense of identity or self-sufficiency. So then they gain all this money, get all these other things, but yet they don't build, or their first focus is to buy a home or buy things from a place, again, performance, or to prove, because they don't have a sense of identity, a lack of identity, or they have low self-esteem because they're coming from places like this. What they end up doing is what? Reenacting, even though they don't look the same as that man or whomever that is, they just reenact it different. They just reenact it different. Because those same structures and stuff still reflects a lack of not only empathy, but a lack of identity, a lack of self-esteem. They have low self-esteem. These structures are built from a place of not only preying on childhood wounds, but the fact of that is that it being rooted in manipulation and deception and control, they don't learn that shit until they sign the contract. They don't learn that until after years of, all that laboring and tearing their fucking bodies up and shit like that for whatever millions, that they were a part of, like a scam almost. Because they can only get so much, and probably who knows what they're told. You're going to sign this contract. You better not help anybody, or you better not support, you better not do this. And that's why you're going to see more and more of the collapse with that, because what it was rooted in, whoever initiated whatever you want to call it, Constitution, whatever it is, all these different things that were initiated, whoever was behind it, because again, you look at the $2 bill, there were indigenous men, there were darker men. Some even call them Moors. There were people behind the construction, or orchestrating around what was stripped from fucking women, the maternal, the matriarchal. And I dare any man come and try to challenge me on that. Because then you ain't got to answer to me. You got answers to the power that be now. You got answer to Big Mama. Because again, I tell you, a tree of fruit don't got to prove itself. There ain't no man right now, whatever he has built on, like most of them, whatever they have accomplished in the last 150 years, whatever they built on, I don't care, athlete or anything else, whomever it is. Where is your contribution to the maternal, to the mothers and the children, especially the daughters? Where's your contribution? Because the uncertainty comes in the fact of you knowingly know you built your identity around something that isn't rooted in confidence, isn't rooted in a certainty that this will be, longevity and generations after. Because money won't be able to do all of that. It can support to an extent until it runs out. But what good is it if you don't have people who have a sense of surety or confidence or even knowing how to build upon that? Because that starts inwardly. That's why you can win a lottery, you can win money, but the importance of who is with you, and also not even just with you, but knowing. That's why a lot of you can have the biggest contract, you can come into all that shit, but you know that there's certain people that you can't just give money to because not even just the surface things, you know that the discipline. And also, you also know that when giving them that cousin that's strung out on drugs or whatever it is, or whomever it is, you know that in giving them that, where it will go. But it ain't even just the fact of that. It's on a deeper level where if you could emphasize with them or have empathy and put yourself there, then how are you contributing to supporting that they get the treatment or the support through that? Man, a lot of people gonna come to the self-realization that what they created, oh my gosh. They gonna realize how it's gonna hit them out of nowhere. They're gonna, what the fuck have I been doing? So, women and men, especially for you that have built things on stuff, knowing the energy behind it. Whether you don't want to support people that are darker, whether you don't want to, whether you've been a part of systems that make sure people that are of a darker shade or indigenous experience some type of traumatic pain, making sure that they don't get the loan or the support. You only collect the fucking karma. Because your grandkids and your great-grandkids got to live amongst their great-grandkids and their great-great-kids. And guess what ends up happening? Somebody going to come along and they ain't going to go for that shit. That's how the world evolves. What is that word they call it? Conflict resolution. Or is it conflict solution? Resolution, yeah. All that passive aggressive and avoidance you've been doing, baby, I don't care who you are and what you built it upon. You don't see the energy that's rising. Folks ain't going for that shit no more. That energy people been holding back. We are not our parents. We are not, we might embody certain things, but we are not the folks that y'all think that y'all can just step over and trample up. No. That's why I love these generations. These kids, this energy that they coming in. They're not going for that shit. They have a power within them that ain't going for that. And guess what's so beautiful about it? Imagine if I sat across from people who say they this and they do all this other stuff, and then I'd be like, well, damn, hey, bro, y'all love to support these people, these athletes, or whomever it is, but guess what? Damn, bro, why you don't ever ask, like, you know, hey, bro, can you support my mom through this? We going through this right now. Can you support this? And let that be a good judge of character. Why? Oh, you're not able to do it, but you have it? Why aren't we? That's going to be a huge thing right now. It's going to be a huge thing that's coming up right now. Where you at, player? Yeah, y'all that say F the streets and all that. Yeah, but what about the repair and reconciliation? Y'all think, man, no matter who you with, you brush stuff up under the rug. Give a fuck about no shoes, no movie, no nothing. I don't care about none of that. Care about none of that. Where you at? I don't want to hear about no religious character. I don't care about none of that. Why you can't emphasize for my mama and me? I don't care about none of that. It ain't even about the bread, but it's about the character. It's the integrity. I see your character. So yeah, going back to, again, the root chakra, to where it'll be portrayed, like, imagine like women that have built behind these men, and, you know, again, you have to realize, like, they also too have built a false sense of identity around these men. In their supporting whatever racism, whatever structure, whatever business and so forth, it's going to, as it collapses and crumbles, it's going to force them to rebuild their self-esteem and their identity. Because think about it, people really build this so-called sense of self-esteem around what they do, and it's not even rooted in love and truth or honesty. That's why, again, you're going to see people, the panic and the uncertainty of them not knowing how to accumulate this and get this and that. And that's only karma lessons being balanced out. You have to learn. That's why in decline of things is an incline. A decrease in this is an increase in that. So when I was saying, like, how the indigenous woman, like, the origins of her root chakra being, how when I really look at a lot of things, it's just like, wow, like, her sense of physical identity, her stability has been attacked more than anything. And so now that will be reversed. That, like, Uno reverse, that will be even more supported now. That's the new order of things. Because those who want to control that or any people who are being supported and want to control that will they be dealt with, as they say, the divine, yeah. So that's the part of, like, the healing and a lot of things being like the healing in reverse, or the healing that's happening. It has to start with the root. Like, that's why it's so important for a lot of women to realize, like, as they walk away from things, whether it's religious, family, relationships, and so forth, you are recalibrating, rebuilding your root chakra. You are stabilizing yourself. A lot of you have come through generations where grandma had to develop this identity around society from a place of survival and fear. Okay, that affects everybody. That goes to say, like, if you have a grandma where generationally a lot of you probably are being called to reconnect to things ancestrally or spiritually, it's probably because the opposition of that would look like her believing in a certain religious character. and having, and then just the mental illness in that. And then as I've spoken before, like, probably most likely doing the removal of a father figure and so forth, which affected her stability, which the father mirrors back, how a daughter, that reassurance, or how she, how innately even did some, like genetically receives certain parts of the father, like the personality, the intensity. Like, we receive different things patriarchally and matriarchally. So a lot of you as daughters, whether the first daughter, whatever it is, you receive a lot of traits from your father. You can probably look like him. You will receive a lot of different things. This is just a balance of the universe. But what has happened is, think about the women who did not have a father. They're a majority of the women, whether in certain demographics, indigenously, for some of you darker women who grew up with fathers, or he was in prison, or in jail, or developed this hustle identity, or never protected you from whatever it was that you needed protection from. So you got to realize that this affected your self-esteem. This affected your root chakra, your base, your stability. This affected your survival instincts, or how you survived in the world, depending on what type of mother you had as well. If the man wasn't there, or the relationship wasn't harmonious, or it wasn't healthy, what ends up happening is that, again, you don't have a grounded approach in life. I don't care how many degrees and all this other stuff you have had or obtained. When it comes to the fact of outside of that, who are you emotionally, mentally? Are you stable emotionally, mentally? Because, for example, that's why you can see a lot of women, so I'm giving examples like, they question why they haven't got a man, or why they can't keep one. It's because, again, it's not the blame or your fault. It's the fact of how you've had to develop a sense of, for one, like the things that have, sometimes for a lot of you, religion has like been almost like this shield, or this safety blanket from your insecurities about yourself, your fears, your anxiety, your self-esteem. Because if you're coming from mothers and grandmothers who have developed an identity around a man that don't look like them, have built an identity around all of that, and then has told you to go to that when you have something going on emotionally or mentally and so forth, who tell you to take it to someone, again, you develop a belief system around that you never questioned young. Then when you're force-fed, religion or whatever, and this can be of different religious beliefs, you're given these things young, but then you can have a emotionally unavailable parent or guardian, a father. Like I said, it can look different for everybody. And what ends up happening is that, again, the reason why, like, you can't stabilize a marriage or something is because, for one, for some of y'all, all that you know is, because I've seen this happen with people, I'm telling you, like, you can say, like, mom and dad got married and all this other stuff, but the fact of that man still dealing with whatever vices, he steps out on mom, but then they stay together. Or some of y'all seeing abuse, some of y'all seeing a lot of things happen. A lot of this reflects stability, emotional stability, security. So if you haven't seen nothing really healthy, you're going to convince yourself that you can sustain something healthy. I didn't say you're not able to build towards it, but sometimes for a lot of people, the delusion that they live in, or confusion, is that they will build on something, but not really from a place of emotional security. They'll build on something with a man that could be religious, or with a man, but that's not really in tune spiritually. And then they realize, like, there's no depth to him or to her. There's no emotional depth to her, to him, let's say, because, again, whatever belief system, whatever he was in, his mother has shown to him and so forth, there's no depth to him. You know, there's no he hasn't met himself deeper. So a lot of things people don't realize, like there's different parts that people through their child development have learned. And a lot of it is a belief system of someone else. A lot of religion is not like certain beliefs don't teach you. It's from my perspective, it's all surface stuff for me. When I've seen people like, oh God, this, you know, you a kid, you young. What the fuck? Where we at? Where you at? Or who this person? Where? You're looking for, and some of you are still looking for a religious figure. I know this could be very like, in a sense, boy, people have their panties in the butt, but you gotta realize, bro, in the shift of naturally how feminine and masculine energy operates, you're going to see that a lot of these structures, a lot of these things that were not built upon emotional security or stability, it will begin to trickle down to your spouse, your relationships, and so forth. All these things are going to come out. It's going to show the fact that what you created and what you thought you were stabilizing, it had no depth to it. It didn't really have, it was never truly stable because the world wanted you to focus more on the material. You know, a lot of y'all have been bamboozled and tricked to just focus on the material man, the man that has this and has that. And again, you could have grew up with a father who gave you all the things. He could have gave you everything, but he was emotionally unavailable. He was emotionally unavailable. Then now, guess what? You attract or get in connections with men similarly. They'll give you everything, but then you're just sitting there numb and wonder why he can't connect to you emotionally. And some of the times when we don't realize how things happen through child development, most of the times, like when you're dealing with, especially in certain demographics, men that indigenous men who have seen what we went through for so many, like in the last 150 years, like just what we went through, experience. We haven't had empathetic mothers. They can have sympathy, but we haven't had empathetic mothers. We haven't had a lot of mothers who know how to connect, and it's not their fault. It's the fact that they're dealing with their own anxiety around, their own mental warfare generationally. They're dealing with, how they're going to pay bills, especially if they had to do it on their own, or even stayed in abusive things, or even stayed in relations where they became complacent. They settled. And what ends up happening is that, again, the reason to highlight the root chakra aspect is that a lot of women will never say that they have low self-esteem. A lot about what I perceive to be like a lot of religious things, or a lot of these systems that have been in place, when it keeps the woman feminine energy from self-expression outside of what she believes in, or outside of what she's called to do, outside of motherhood, outside of being a stay-at-home mom, outside of just this and that. What could end up happening is for certain women to eventually implode or explode to where now they realize, like for a lot of them, they're going to realize like that identity that they try to build because of societal norms, or because they thought it was okay, or peer pressured, or realizing that a lot of what you see in the world has not even evolved past high school, or a lot of people are undeveloped emotionally. They haven't faced themselves. They just built certain structures or clubs or covens or whatever the fuck it is that hasn't really evolved emotionally or mentally or spiritually. And so now they're having at 40, 50, 60, whatever it is, if they choose to realize they have to rebuild an identity around their own identity around self. And due to the fact of the suppression or their voice being silenced very young, because it can happen religiously. Oh, you're the pastor's daughter, identities forced on them. That could be some identities around, oh, you're a princess, this goes deep, because people born into things like in other countries. Oh, you're such and such, I even know women, that, father was probably like what they call a drug lord or the man. Oh, you such and such. And they never truly develop their own identity around, like, they never have been at peace or develop a sense of confidence or self-esteem, what it is around what they do. They've been around people who've been monitoring them, or who've been, and that's typically what happens in, again, a patriarchal society, a false empowerment, or they don't honor the feminine archetype, or, the feminine energy, and how they display it through their wounded masculinity. Their approach and actions is that they want to control everything about a woman. They want to control how she expresses herself, how she maneuvers in the world, the structures, everything, her money and so forth. This shit comes up. When I say stuff, I get clarity. That's why you see the WNBA. That's why you see the treatment, a lot of stuff the way it is. Because women don't realize, for some of them, they do know, but it's the fact of even the fact of what their mother and grandmother went through, it still is similar energy to where now they're starting to use their voice. I encourage them to, because it's been silent. They don't realize, like, they were called to be a part of those things. Only for them now, they're no different than their mama and grandma, who, whether they spoke up or not, is to voice themselves, to speak up about how they've been treated and so forth. So what? Whatever the fuck around you collapse. A lot of them fear, because again, the root chakra, they fear because a lot of women have went through so much. They fear the consequences of their foundations being removed, their finances, their life being threatened, so many different things. Until they get to this point where they realize, like, once they realize that they have the power to destroy all this shit with just by doing nothing. Once they get that and grasp that shit and realize that they can start wherever they are and create whatever they want to. Once they start tapping into that magic, once they start really using their shit to the ability to realize, like, wow, you know what? I actually want to build towards something stable. That's why a lot of women have a misconception on getting the material man and assuming that that's going to stabilize them. That's still seeking for validation, or seeking from a place of showing that you don't know how to do it yourself. And I don't mean through the way of, like, what is being displayed now, because, oh my gosh, it's been wild now, because it's too much on the masculine aspect, the overexertion or the wounded masculinity, because a lot of you have learned from other people. It's doing you can do it without being loud or trying, and I don't mean loud by speaking, I'm like doing it without feeling like you have to feel seen. Because your inner voice doesn't need to be acknowledged. Your inner voice, your inner child, the little girl, is awaiting you to accept it. That means you can go in the world and move however you want to move, love. You can do whatever you want. That's why the daughters right now, that energy of the daughter, that energy of she's crowning herself. This is the grounded energy. So the royal energy of mother, son, father, daughter, all of those energies have been crowned. Shout out to Sister Mara. But the recalibration of the grounded energy, the daughter energy represents the earth. The daughter earth is being is it reconciled? No. The reconciliation is happening between you and your essence, your inner child, women, mothers. The reconciliation is happening within you. And with that, you know what comes up? Everything that you cannot keep down no more. You begin to honor every emotion, every suppressed memory. You begin to channel every fucking thing that kept your mother, your grandmother from playing small. You carry that emotional resonance. You carry that power. But religion and other shit wanted to keep you in a box, to keep you from that flow, that feminine flow. So due to the fact of, you got to realize, like, once y'all start realizing certain warriors and women who did not fear being unalive or death. It's the energy that they came in. It's the energy and the knowing that they came to experience this shit, and then after this, their energy, their force, and who they are will live on. Some of y'all embody that shit. Some of y'all had the power, the money, the resources to recreate and invent your own everything. See, they want you to believe that you got to get it from them. You created it for them, because when you look at the cycles and when you look at feminine energy and when you look at monetary, the moon, we know that anything ruled by the moon first, cycles came from the woman first. Men, we just fucking regurgitate shit. If you want to be honest, as a vessel, we just, the support from whatever women in my life or whatever, from that feminine aspect, it's like a regurgitation or a recreation or reinvention of that evolution from that feminine energy. So I know y'all in relationships with men and so forth, but deep down, some of y'all are oh shit, I gotta say it. Some of y'all are so way more powerful than them. Some of y'all know that some of the stuff that they wouldn't even have what they have without you being there. Imagine the corruption in a lot of women, the wickedness that have stood behind some of these people y'all call leaders. Now that their foundations is threatened because you rise up. Because now you going away from certain shit. Now you honoring that which became you. You're forgetting the shit that runs in your veins, bro. Why would I tell you to forget about what your mother and grandmother went through? And great-grandmother? And great-grand-grandmother? Why would I? Let alone your grandfathers. Why would I tell you to forget that? I keep telling y'all, some of y'all have the power within you that you are going to be called to do things. And when I say it's going to collapse everything around you, are you still going to be willing to take back your throne within yourself? Y'all be talking about y'all this and crown and have all this, but when are y'all going to take back power within yourself? Stop playing as if you ain't, have all these men and all these people trying to tell you what to do and so forth. Like I told y'all, their leadership, whomever it is, they don't care what they do. When you start to pay attention to, for one, are they in tune with themselves spiritually? Are they feeding you? And I don't mean the ones that has come along and tried to get all the women into, get on bending knee and do all this other shit. Those are just women who really didn't know themselves. That's what that was. They really didn't know themselves. Ain't no fucking way. Because some women, the power y'all have, some of y'all here not, you're not here to be controlled. Because for one, feminine, the flow cannot be controlled. It cannot be tamed. Some of y'all are here to take that back. Take that power back. Take your power back in relationships, in dynamics, and so y'all are here to do that. And then rebuild with men who honor that and people who honor and align with that don't have an issue with that. It's okay. Some of y'all gonna come to them self-realization. Like I told you, I don't care what type of status and all that other stuff. Like I said, you can be a princess in a whole other country. You can be in a whole other country and so forth. You still have been subjected to some type of oppression, whether in your lineage and legacy and so forth from what has happened. Because again, a lot of those men, I'm telling you like this, bro. I'm going to tell you like this, sis. What was placed on my heart and my spirit, when I really sat back and I started to see like how my mother and grandmother and just the women I came through and come from, and then some of the women I've been around, I'm like, bro, what the I said, but I was like, a real one, no, you cannot control shit really what a woman can do. Feminine energy, no matter how people want to describe the gender or not, they know that when you in tune with that, there is no controlling it. I keep telling y'all, a lot of what you have, the root chakra in a lot of you in your lineage, a lot of you are liberating that. You're becoming sovereign. You're here to it's your birthright this lifetime for a lot of you. Yup. And this is what, like, for a lot of people, the fear is what's been ruling them. But it's going to become very clear that the people you thought had it together, no matter what they've obtained, you're going to start to realize, like, they're very unstable in their ways. They just performed and kept it together for so long until those spirits and those things have to reveal itself. And the more, again, as you step into your power, stabilize and do the inner work and face certain things, man, more and more women, especially that have been silenced, that yearning, that forces is going to come out, play out through the feminine that was wounded. The silence of that is going to play out in the masculine form. And I love it. I fucking love it. And anybody that's opposing to that, men, women, especially like opposing to that, your power is going to come in as, once you see who they are, believe them. Once they show you and so forth and so forth, tell your story, let it be known and so forth. Because as you do that, you shatter illusions, you break spells, you shatter the illusion that they've tried to cast on you, like, oh, I can do all these things, or the threats and all that. They'll do everything. That spirit, whatever they battling with, their false sense of security, and they have no identity because they have to siphon through you. They have to build their identity around you, because that's naturally, especially he's not secure within himself. They'll naturally try to build off of you, use you, siphon for your energy, get what they get, and leave. I'm telling you from experience, especially from a man who didn't know a sense of self or have identity, or wasn't stable. That's what manipulation, the old world deception and so forth. They come in with this, giving you, it's almost like they don't got to give you a physical contract, but they'll give you something to be like, oh yeah. That's how people present themselves, bro. You'll see they'll come in with this intention, but as y'all become more in tune, you'll realize like, oh, you'll be able to pick up on it and be more discerning. And with that, then you'll be able to realize like, oh, no. Ask yourself, start asking yourself, wow, I can do this. I have to start it. And the right people will come along and align with it. Then you'll be able to build something that's more stable. But for some of you have to go through those experiences of realizing how deceptive you've been to yourself, how you lied to yourself and so forth, whatever, through relationships, business, so forth and so forth. And then what ends up happening, boom, it gives you an opportunity, divine intervention, to build your own. I don't care whatever you're in, whatever industry, music and so forth. It's going to be so rewarding when you're able to build it from yourself, because it's going to be built from within. It's going to be rooted in truth and honesty. You're going to go through so many emotions. You're going to go through everything. Then you're going to start building your own communities, your own everything. Because that's the matriarch. That's the divine mother taking back her power. Peace and blessings. Shalom.